Raid on Mar-a-Lago! Yay! Look what we found! Wait a minute. Nothing? Well, bet this is one of your knuckle-brain ideas! That, ladies and gentlemen, is my best guess of a certain high-level conversation. How high? Doesn't matter. Good afternoon. This, of course, is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Last night, the FBI crossed an historical line that no one ever accused even J. Edgar Hoover of crossing. They raided the home of a former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump by name. A coherent narrative explaining this raid has taken overnight to manifest itself, but we now have reason to suspect that the FBI was looking for certain archivable documents that Trump took to his home. Some of these documents might have been classified, but even someone who once worked for the FBI says this is a de minimis violation that cannot justify the raid. This represents the political weaponization of law enforcement. The American people know it and will not tolerate it. Before we dive into it, I do want to shout out to the sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views, link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which reads, "Freedom isn't free." That says it all, folks, and last night we just learned it all over again. For reportage on the raid, I've chosen conservative and some independent sources. Mainstream media sources have totally discredited themselves. I don't trust them any further than I can throw their office buildings and press plant. And I don't recommend that you trust them either. Not unless a source we can trust has quoted them. Now, the Daily Wire has the most complete report on the Trump raid and the reasons for it. They cite the New York Times as saying that the FBI were looking for, and I quote, material that Trump had brought with him to Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence, after he left the White House, unquote, the New York Times. Trump stands accused of delaying the return of more than a dozen boxes of material to the National Archives. Some, but not all of these documents were classified national security information. Close quote. You want to know what I think? I think maybe these are the kinds of evidence that Trump will need when he does return to the White House, whenever that happens, to identify certain persons who have perverted the missions of federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies. He would then classify them as Schedule F employees, that meaning staff in positions of confidential policy determining, policy making, and policy advocating character. And then he would fire the lot of them. So the FBI would have one obvious motive to lay on a raid like this. It now becomes a desperate attempt to forestall seeing a bunch of their agents and those of other agencies fired. But the FBI has a second motive. Marc Elias, one of Hillary Clinton's lawyers, gave the game away in a brazen and lightly impulsive tweet. He said the FBI could nail Trump on Title 18 United States Code Section 2071. I have a link in the description to Marc Elias' tweet. Now, under that section, anyone trying to conceal or destroy any sort of federal record would face a fine and imprisonment. But this is the key penalty the deep state wanted to impose. Quote, the offender shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. Unquote, the United States Code. So now we have the more important motive to disbar Trump legally from running for president again. It would also disqualify him from returning to the presidency under any conceivable circumstances. Now this falls in line with a statement by Dr. Stephen Turley in an hour-long YouTube live stream on the Trump raid. He called the Trump raid a desperate measure and suggested that it would not work as intended. Don't worry, I've created a playlist of 5 relevant YouTube videos and left a link to it in the description. Dr. Steve's hour-long live stream is right at the top of that list. Now, Mr. Chris Swecker, former Assistant Director of the FBI and a 24-year veteran with that agency, told Fox and Friends that he could think of no reasonable explanation for the raid. Any violation that did occur with respect to National Archives property would have been de minimis at worst. Now, stop right there. Fancy Latin alert. De minimis means the kind of violation you normally clear up with a few phone calls, unless anyone shows deliberate intent to hide or destroy. Something. Now, there's a meme floating around trying to allege that Trump is deliberately trying to destroy documents. Now, I'm not even going to describe that, because that is not the kind of thing that you describe in polite company. Well, maybe the actor Jim Carrey might talk about a thing like that, but I won't. Anyway, the kind of thing we're talking about here would never justify a raid on a former president's home. Something the FBI has never done before. And yes, that video is on the playlist too. Trump did release a statement about the raid. The Independent, a UK organ, carried the full text, and I'm going to read it to you now. These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After I've been working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was neither necessary nor appropriate. It is prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024, especially based on recent polls, and who will likewise do anything to stop Republicans and conservatives in the upcoming midterm elections. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. Sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe. What is the difference between this and Watergate, where operatives broke into the Democratic National Committee? Here in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States. The political persecution of President Donald J. Trump has been going on for years. With the now fully debunked Russia scam, impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, and so much more. It just never ends. It is political targeting at the highest level. Hillary Clinton was allowed to delete and acid wash 33,000 emails after they were subpoenaed by conference. Absolutely nothing has happened to hold her accountable. She even took antique furniture and other items from the White House. I stood up to America's bureaucratic corruption. I restored power to the people and truly delivered for our country the way like we've never seen before. The establishment hated it. Now, as they watch my endorsed candidates win big victories and see my dominance in all polls, they're trying to stop me and the Republican Party once more. The lawlessness, political persecution, and witch hunt must be exposed and stopped. I will continue to fight for the great American people. Unquote, Donald J. Trump. Trump himself posted an image of this statement on his Truth Social platform. He followed this up with a 3-minute video about the raid that plays like a political advertisement. He uploaded this video to Rumble, but unfortunately kept it private, thus making it unplayable elsewhere than on Truth Social. I urge you all to get on to Truth Social at truthsocial.com, create an account, and look for the account at Real Donald Trump. You will find these posts there. The Western Journal also quoted the statement, although they didn't reproduce the whole thing. Reaction to this affair has been swift and, for the most part, outraged. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida furiously called the raid, and I quote, another escalation in the weaponization of federal agencies against the regime's opponents, while people like Hunter Biden get treated with kid gloves, unquote Ron DeSantis. And I have a link to his tweet in the description. And further to the point, he cited the Inflation Reduction Act. That act adds 87,000 agents to the ranks of the Internal Revenue Service. Christine Dolan at Creative Destruction Media asserts, as Chris Swecker would agree, that Attorney General Merrick Garland and current FBI Director Christopher Wray would both have to have authorized it in writing. Swecker said this that in the 24 years with the Bureau, no earlier director would ever have authorized a raid like this. The Blaze reported that Trump was at the Trump Tower apartment in Manhattan at the time of the raid. They also had a tweet by Representative Ted Lieu from California taking issue with Trump calling the raid prosecutorial misconduct. I have a link to that in the description also. In fact, I have so many links to tweets, 9 in all. Except for the Marc Elias tweet, I just put them all in a list, one after the other. Prosecutors don't approve warrants, he said. Well, evidently he forgot that only a de minimis violation was ever even alleged. Or he believes that as far as Donald Trump is concerned, no violation of the law is de minimis. Now, I'm going to move along with reaction by the two men who will likely fight for the speakership next January. Before I do, I'm going to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. And that sponsor is oursilverlines.com. Do you feel that you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know when, where, or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities that company provides, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. Now, we start with Representative Kevin McCarthy, also of California, who happens to be the House Minority Leader. He released a statement that the Epoch Times repeated. I have that tweet in that big list I told you about, and here's what he said. I've seen enough. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization. When Republicans take back the House, we will conduct immediate oversight of that department, follow the facts, and leave no stone unturned. Attorney General Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar. Those are fighting words. In fact, they are the strongest fighting words I have ever heard Kevin McCarthy use. But I can't trust him to follow through. He has a nasty reputation for middle-of-the-roadism. I'd trust those words a lot more if they came from Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio. Hours before the Trump raid, Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, and he's no relation to Bill Gates, they don't even spell their names the same, urged Jordan to challenge McCarthy for the speakership after midterms. So, Jordan serves as the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. last night he called on its chairman to hail General Garland and Director Wray before the green table. I have that tweet in the big list too. And he said, and I quote, "What was in the warrant? What were you really doing? What were you looking for? Why not talk to President Trump and have him give the information you're after? We deserve answers now. And this Friday would be a good time. Jerry Nadler, call up Christopher Wray, call up Merrick Garland, and bring them in front of the House Judiciary Committee so that we can then question them, ask them the questions the American people deserve the answers to." Unquote Jim Jordan. Well, unfortunately, we're talking about Representative Gerald Nadler, Democrat from New York State. So hailing Garland and Wray before the green table is not going to happen. Well, not until after midterms. So why does Mr. Jordan bother? This is called exhaustion of remedies and embarrassment of the nominal officer in charge. The Democrats might also have lost the last respect that Mr. Eric Woods Erickson might have been willing to accord them. Eric Woods Erickson is a never-Trumper who maintains to this day that nothing untoward happened with the election of 2020. This morning, he began by disclaiming any commentary that the Republic is at an end. But then he hinted darkly that the Democrats might have bypassed the usual way to get a search warrant. You see, he talked about what a federal magistrate would look for, and then he said this: Democrats have a long history of ignoring precedents they set. And then he reminded everyone that Trump, and I quote, used and expanded, unquote, Barack Obama's precedents. And then he said, quote, "For 8 years, I warned Democrats they were setting precedents that Republican successors would not just use, but expand. Consequently, Hunter Biden probably should just go and burn his house down and all his belongings today." Whoa, more fighting words. Again, this echoes another aphorism by Dr. Steve: mutual assured destruction. In other words, look out, Democrats. Next year, it's your turn. Especially since, and again I quote, Merrick Garland has just energized the base of the Republican Party and probably inspired Trump 24 to get off the ground with a fundraising spectacular. Unquote Eric Woods Erickson, who also wonders about something else. Why wasn't Senator Charles M. Schumer of New York ballyhooing about the Trump raid when Rachel Maddow interviewed him last night? Why did he ham-haw and clearly not want to talk about it? Erickson tweeted out that segment, and that's on the big tweet list also. Maybe, says Erickson, Schumer didn't want to talk about it because he knows that what the FBI did was poor judgment, if it wasn't flat out wrong. Dan Bongino reacted more explicitly and in barnyard terms too. And evidently he did it before the voice delay censors could clip it out. Don't just take my word for it. Play the playlist. It's the third video on the list. And then comes a video from outside Trump's house when the raid was going on. This morning, Todd Starnes suggested a state of war now exists between the deep state and the American public. He says, quote, "This is the same Justice Department that authorized FBI agents to investigate law-abiding parents. The alleged crimes were complaining about school board policies regarding critical race and a certain kind of grooming." I'm not going to talk about that here. You just go to the article. "The same Justice Department that is targeting law-abiding gun owners. The same government agency who refused to protect the houses of Supreme Court justices. The Democrats have turned the FBI into a Soviet-style state police, a jet-booted goon squad targeting every freedom-loving America First patriot," unquote Todd Starnes. Separately, Several Trump supporters living in and around Palm Beach and even as far away as Tampa streamed toward Mar-a-Lago to picket and heckle the FBI. The big tweet list has 3 tweets with video from a local television station showing the crowd and including at least one interview. Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado reminded everyone rather sharply that now that this has happened to Trump, it could happen to anyone. Her tweet is on the big tweet list also. Now, let's separate fact from fiction, shall we? Under the Presidential Records Act, presidents must turn over most records in the National Archives when they leave office. U.S. Archivist David Ferriero has been in touch with Trump at all last year seeking the return of 15 boxes of documents. And according to the Epoch Times, the archives got those boxes back in January. But Christina Bobb, an attorney for Trump, says that the FBI seized paper last night. Now, how much paper or what paper, she won't say. Neither will anyone else. The U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida has 3 magistrate judges that serve the Palm Beach area. One, Bruce Reinhart, approved several warrants on August 5th. But the warrant applications, supporting affidavits and so on are under seal. It might or might not be significant that Judge Reinhart was once an attorney representing staff and pilots for the notorious Jeffrey Epstein. Nor is this to say that these were the warrants that the FBI had. Another magistrate judge, William Matthewman, granted 1 search warrant yesterday, August 8th. Now that application and the supporting documents are also under seal. And the 3rd magistrate judge, Ryan McCabe, had no search warrant applications on August 5th or 8th. Now, I do not conclude that any of these magistrate judges issued the warrant or warrants that the FBI had. The evidence for Judge Reinhart or Judge Matthewman granting the warrant or warrants is inconclusive. And even if they did, sealing the supporting affidavits is suspicious in and of itself. Now, I have to come back to the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin and Justice Stephen G. Breyer's dissent. He practically demanded that the American people show just cause why state and local governments, especially city governments, should not confiscate firearms from all who choose to reside under their jurisdictions. Justices Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor joined that dissent. Well, former Justice Breyer and Kagan and Sotomayor, JJ, last night the FBI gave us that just cause. This goes to another point by Dr. Steve in his hour-long live stream. The one reason why the phrase Banana Republic does not yet apply to the United States is the Second Amendment. That applies even after what has happened at Mar-a-Lago. Now, it's all very well for Nancy Pelosi, the likely outgoing Speaker of the House, to say that this raid proves that no one is above the law. But that does not create a precedent for a raid on a former president's house when there isn't one. More to the point, far from diminishing Trump in the eyes of the American public, this raid has made him an almost literal martyr. Dr. Steve brought out a video about this in the middle of the day, and you can find that at the end of the YouTube playlist. Whoa. Yeah, I know I said the word M-A-R-T-Y-R, but I didn't say, and don't say, that Trump got hurt. He wasn't even anywhere near the raid, nor even that he would have to get physically hurt. Strictly speaking, you don't have to die to be a martyr. A martyr is a witness, or one whose maltreatment, whether that includes putting to death or not, bears witness to the evil behind the maltreatment. This raid has indeed borne witness to the evil of this administration. The only ones cheering it are Democrats, and the most prominent among them are remarkably subdued. Even Nancy Pelosi is not exactly cackling gleefully about it. Neither is Chuck Schumer. Now you think maybe they're getting worried that the Republicans are going to target them as they targeted us? Now actually, Republicans wouldn't necessarily raid the homes of Barack Obama or the Clintons, and they wouldn't consider Jimmy Carter worth bothering about. But they might lay on a few other raids for which they have the thing likely missing here: probable cause. Now yesterday I told you that what Dobbs versus Jackson Women's might be to the Democratic base, the Inflation Reduction Act would be to the Republican base. I was wrong. Last night changed the game. The FBI raid on the Trump mansion will displace the Inflation Reduction Act as the force galvanizing the Republican base. And it will be an order of magnitude more powerful. Link in the description of the article to that 5-member YouTube playlist, to Marc Elias' tweet, to the full text of Donald Trump's statement, to 9 other tweets in reaction to the raid, and to conservative news and views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to OurSilverLines.com. As I also mentioned, if you like this video, you can subscribe to this channel, and if you like what you've heard, you can like this video. And on the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link and links to the big playlist and to 1 or 2 other relevant videos. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.